Welcome to the Principia podcast, episode 2. This is Jana Fuller, and today we will be going over her journey a little bit, but of course we start with the most serious question first. If you were able to pick your own nickname from your childhood, what nickname would you give yourself? And then what nickname did you actually have? To set the tone, I think I'll start.
Okay.
Dragonheart definitely would be my nickname for myself. Mitch the Bitch was the reality though, so so that would be mine.
Okay. I cannot actually think of one, but I was called Annie after the Annie movie most of my life because a redheaded curly-haired girl. So I'll just stick with that one.
Okay. All right. Well, Jana's been a member with us for pretty much the whole time, right? Like 2 years now?
Yeah.
We've only been open about 2.5 years, so about 6 months in probably. She came to us, and we'll kind of get into everything that you've accomplished throughout, but what was the main problem that you were having before you discovered Principia CrossFit?
There were so many. I was pretty broken. I had let my weight get back to over 200 pounds, which I had promised myself I would never. I was post-op from having my gallbladder out, so I had been very settled all winter long, and emotionally, my anxiety was back to its peak. I was non-functioning, is what I would call it.
So non-functioning is in like you would work and go home and that's it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to put words in your
No.
mouth. Just let me know if that was accurate.
That is correct.
Okay. When you mentioned that story, there was a time where you were under 200 pounds. You said it was the second time you went over 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Can we hear a little bit about being kind of your path that you took to get under 200 pounds in the first place? And then maybe if you can identify what took you off that path?
I think in the past, typical, especially females, we have the tend to do the starvation diet, and that's not sustainable. So eventually, when you eat like a normal human being, your weight just starts creeping back up.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's probably the only way I ever stayed underweight was like I very rarely even ate.
Okay, so you did like more of an extreme dieting thing, and that's how you originally lost weight, and then you're like, well, this isn't sustainable, I have to eat something, and then because your body finally went out of starvation mode, and it just started, well, it was still in starvation mode, you started eating though, and then it was like, I might not get this food continually, so I need to store up, basically, if
Pretty
you look
much.
at it from from like the perspective of how genetically humans are made. And then at what point, like, was there a moment where before you came in, like, you're back over 200 pounds, was there a time or an incident or something that really triggered you to decide to make a step in the right direction?
Honestly, I think it was after I started again. Although, that was probably always in the back of my head to get to that goal. The first week I came is the week that my dad died. And
First week you came here? That was that week?
yeah, I came here the first 3 days of my first week, and he was hospitalized that night of the third day, and he passed away on the 5th day.
I remember that a little bit, but...
Yeah, and even though it took me probably 6 months after his death to realize that if I don't change my ways of life, that I was going to be him one day, unhealthy, forced into retirement, and not have a life to enjoy retirement.
Yeah, there's no choices. He had his choices stripped from him because
Correct.
his health wasn't there. It's interesting. What was some of the frustration you felt when you tried to do it on your own?
It's so easy to lie to yourself and not hold yourself accountable. Like, if I was to go work out on my own, like, I could say, like, this is what I'm going to do for 30 minutes, but when you're done after 10 minutes and nobody's there to hold you accountable, it's so easy to pack up and leave and put
you
it
checked
aside.
the box, right?
Yeah,
So,
I showed up, but did I really do the work?
No, I hear you. So, what was different about how we went about it? What would you say was different here?
A couple of previous CrossFit gyms that I had gone to, the term of always you have to work to do everything RX was always in the back of my head. And it kind of sets you up for failure because honestly, I'm a 42-year-old woman. I'm not going to do some things. I'm just not. I have to learn to accept that.
Yeah.
And to have a gym that's willing to give you modifications that, one, you still get a good workout and push yourself is something that I greatly needed in my life.
Okay. Because it filled that hour now instead of you being like, well, I can't do that, so I'm just not going to do it at all.
Yeah. Or getting stuck doing the same modifications for 7 months in a row. And yeah, I mastered that, but no guidance to get to the next step.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. The whole concept of RX is very interesting because it, for a lot of people, does set people up for failure. And for other people, it sets them up for success. Exactly. And it's important that we just recognize the value of RX and what it means. Mm-hmm. And we really break that down for people as they come in, which is actually part of our on-ramp process, is really getting people to understand that RX is really just a prescription that really just hints at what the workout's supposed to feel like. Mm-hmm. You have to make it feel like that for you, though, which is where the coach's guidance really comes in. Be like, well, I think you can get that same stimulus with this movement instead. And that's definitely something in our on-ramp process that we get people a little bit exposed to so that they understand that they aren't just expected to do what's written for the day. We like to think of it as a template, and everybody needs to build their own template out a little bit more, and they, provide some variants for them so that they can stay on track with the overall template, but still reach outside of that at some points. What were some of the things that you were trying as far as managing the weight? Besides, were there anything other than extreme dieting and 10 minutes at the gym?
Okay, maybe a little longer than 10 minutes. But, I had a tendency to eat healthy, but allow myself one cheat day. Well, then that cheat day ended up being 6 cheat days, 7 cheat days. It was
like a spiral.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would.
So you would eat one meal and then be like, well, now what's the point of the rest of the day? So you'd eat the rest of the day, and then the next day you're kind of like, oh, I don't see the point today either because I already screwed up. Or
yeah.
Okay, so
that mentality of, well, I already cheated once, I might as well just keep going.
Okay, so it was definitely something you had to in retrospect, you had to reflect on what was happening with the decisions you were making, and now, what are do you still have a cheat meal?
I allow myself a cheat usually in every 6 weeks or so. I find it if I make it further out, one, my cravings are less because I'm, sugar is addiction and sugar is in everything, and once you let it in, it just spirals. So I allow myself every 6 weeks or so to.
Yeah, how do you feel after eating something like that?
I'm not very good.
Yeah, I find that if we actually approach our eating as asking the question of how do I want to feel after, we have a lot more success in making a smart choice. Because that you're going to eat that sugar and you haven't had that much sugar in 6 weeks at one sitting, you're going to feel like crap afterwards, more than likely, especially for how long does that crud feel like for you?
It sets me back a week.
A week? Yeah. So for me, it's 24 hours, but some people, absolutely, it goes further than that, a whole week. That's hard mentally to do that, which is why you probably have to spread it out for 6 weeks because you're not going to bounce right back.
Yeah.
It's going to be more of a challenge for you to come back from that. That's interesting. It's cool that you've, one thing that's I think is unique about your story is that you weren't in here asking us a bunch of questions and getting us to give you those results, which I think is an important lesson for people. We are here to give tools and everything, but ultimately it's on the individual to keep pursuing everything outside of here because that's where the changes really happen.
100%.
How much did this gym, the physical aspect of it, really impact some of that weight loss?
I think the community support definitely helped.
Okay.
But no, my weight loss was 100% changing my diet. I've always been an active person, but the saying, you can't work out a bad diet. You can't.
Yeah.
And I had to 100% change how I
Right.
ate and how I viewed food and everything.
And for those listening, what she said was that the community helped her from like the mental side of things, but physically we didn't do a whole lot. Like, I mean, she did some exercises in here. She got sweaty. That helps for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's the people that she's surrounding herself with in congruence with all those things that you are focused on doing, like the food stuff, right? And executing and taking action yourself. And I think a lot of people just think they're going to join any gym and that gym's going to solve their problem. And it's not the gym that needs to solve the problem. It's you that needs to solve the problem. The gym's there to maybe alleviate some other stresses so that you can more easily solve that problem.
Exactly. Yes.
Or spend your time focused on it. And I think you're one of those people who really got that. And once you got it, you've been able to sustain it. Yeah, it took a long time.
It took a long time for me.
We've talked about it a few times where I was like, well, how long were you really dealing with this problem?
Most of my life.
Right. So it's how long are you going to be dealing with it?
The rest of my life.
Right. So like that's kind of, especially with a big weight loss journey like yours, how much weight did you lose?
64 pounds.
64 pounds of weight loss.
A little over a year.
Right. Yeah, it was right around a year, which is really cool. But she's been here for 2 years. That journey really started before that.
Yeah.
But once she was able to kind of feel like this was relieving some of the stress in her life, she was able to start really focusing in on what was important for that weight loss to happen.
Yeah.
But that whole first year, she didn't lose 64 pounds. It was the second year, which I think that's that consistency, right? She made a consistent habit out of being here, and she's probably one of the most consistent members I have. And once that habit became solid for her, she was able to start working on a different habit, right? And I think I'm recognizing this and maybe putting words in your mouth, but you tell me if I am completely batshit crazy here.
Okay.
Did it feel like that's what happened? Like you made one habit solid and then worked on the next one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
100%.
And the lesson, the takeaway, guys, is a habit is not let's tackle all the habits at once and do all your New Year's resolutions. It's January right now, for those that don't know. So the idea is to pick the thing that you can do consistently, make it consistent until it's a strong habit, which how long do you think it took to make this a strong habit?
I still think it's a work in progress. I mean, it's like
2 years in and you still feel like you're working on it.
Yeah, it's an everyday battle. Like some days I feel like it's extremely easy to make the right decisions, and some days I literally have to talk myself out of making the wrong decision all day long.
And so what I want the listener or the viewer or whatever to kind of take away from this is that that it's still a work. It's 2 years in, and your life is still on a path towards changing and becoming consistent. And this habit is not the strongest habit you have, right? Like breathing is the strongest habit you have, right?
Yeah.
But this is by no means an unconscious habit. And I think we read a lot of these self-help books and they say it takes 21 days or a month to change your life. Bullshit. It's constantly being involved with it. It's constantly failing and then battling yourself back. It's all of what you've gone through, and not just the last 2 years here, but even prior to that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people need to hear that message a little bit, because I think in January, oftentimes anyway, people just expect to join a gym and then that 1 month they're going to change the course of their life. And in our reality, you're just going to be at the gym long enough to fail, and then that's your first test. And if you can pass your first test, you're a little bit stronger for your second.
Yeah.
And the second's going to come, and then the third, and then the fourth, and so on. It's an ever-evolving process. I'm still going through processes, and I've been doing this for many years, like about double digits now, of consistent fitness. But my process has always been evolving and changing. So it's definitely, I want the message to be very clear that you're not going to make a 30-day habit ever in 30 days.
30 days, I felt like I still didn't have even an inch of control over my issues.
Yeah. So I think realistic expectations is huge. I think that's what I want people to hear from your story. 64 pounds of weight loss in a year is an amazing achievement, and nobody can take away from that, including yourself, right? And you're like, yeah, I can. I do it all the time.
Pretty much.
But ultimately, the fact still remains you did something that not a lot of people have been able to do, but it wasn't just that 1 year.
No.
You know what I mean? It was so many years prior of failing, of trying things, of working at it, of surrounding yourself with the right people before finally the thing happens, right? And you kind of fall into what I call a flow state of success. And now you're probably reaching a different part of that because you've lost so much weight now. There's not a whole lot more to lose. It's more body fat, right? Like
Pretty much.
And now we're talking, there's a little bit more strict structure around some of the goals you have than there was probably when you started.
I actually think closer I get, it seems like when you get close to your goal, you kind of get more relaxed. You're like, hey, I got this. In fact, I did that.
Yeah.
And I slipped backwards a little bit, not a lot, but enough to make me question myself. And I find that actually I have to be even more diligent now than I did in the beginning, because now everything counts.
Yeah, and I say it's true. CrossFit actually gets harder the more you do it, because then you get so good that it's more intense, and then you get so good that you have to add more weight somehow, and now it's taking a bigger toll on your body. There's it. And that's with anything you want to be good at. So in your case, with the weight loss and the getting the body that you want, the closer you get to it, the more refinement that has to happen, the more dedicated you have to become, which is hard because you did lose 64 pounds. It's a lot of weight, you know? Like, you want to spend some time rewarding that, but you're right. You'll slip into what you call a fail, and you have to learn your lessons from that and bounce back, which you did. Yeah. So it's cool that we could just be a part of that. And I'm really grateful for you and the person you've become.
Thank you.
And I'm especially, I remember you were joining, and I thought, there's no way she sticks around. Her dad just died. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But you really proved me wrong, and it taught me some lessons too. And I don't ever voice those concerns with people, but it was one of those things where I as a coach that I was proven wrong by somebody, and I was able to see some different strengths in you that maybe you weren't able to see. Yeah. And that being persistent and creating that habit out of going through something like that is huge. Most people is when they're most vulnerable is when they're going through grieving processes like that. And while you were most vulnerable, you were able to make this happen. And I want you to take some credit for that too. That's a hard thing to do.
No, it was definitely hard, especially the first 6 months. So.
Yeah, so really proud that you did that. Can you take me through the moment that you realized that everything was kind of working for you here?
I was actually pretty recently.
Okay.
Probably back in September. I had already lost the 64. And even though I have a tendency to be one of those who looks at what I can't do, I finally actually started looking at what I have achieved. Not just the weight loss, but when I first started, I could hardly run. I was out of breath easily. I didn't move very fluid. I was in a lot of pain, and I don't really have a lot of joint pain anymore. I actually was able to run the 5K this year, and I ran the whole thing. I wasn't fast, but I actually ran the whole thing. And even though my lifts after losing weight are down lower than what they were pre-weight loss, I feel like they're stronger.
Yeah. You own that movement a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you were cheating a range of motion or just using your body weight's momentum to help get the weight up. Now you're using muscle.
Yeah.
Right? And I think with CrossFit, there's a lot of movements where you can use your body weight to your advantage. So I think it's important to feel like you own that movement as it is, because then you are actually strong at that movement, which I think if you're only using weight as a measurement, you're kind of also setting yourself up for failure, right?
Yeah.
There's that, I've been talking a lot about it recently, there's that one thing you can't measure, which is quality. Can't really measure that. I mean, we can set standards, but ultimately people will achieve those standards by reaching outside of quality. Like if you look at the depth of an air squat, right? People will reach outside of quality to hit the depth. And it's well, that no longer is what we want, right? So I think it's important that you do pay attention to what I call the one subjective measure that actually takes control of all other measures, which is quality, which is cool that you feel really strong in some
Yeah.
movements that, even though the number is down,
Yeah.
the strength, I think, is probably up. The strength of
Yeah.
the actual muscle being worked is probably up.
Yeah.
What is life like now that you're on this path? Problems solved or is being solved?
I would say
of course?
it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think my self-confidence is up. It's not where it should be, but it's definitely up.
Mhm.
My anxiety is way more under control. I'm able to be social and out and about more again. And overall, even my job is more, I can control my feelings there
Oh,
too.
wow.
Because
Yeah.
I got to the point where I couldn't even there. I would be sitting at my desk and cry for no reason, and it was just because I was so unhappy with where
Yeah.
I was in life.
Yeah, that's I talked about it on the last podcast, but I mean it's so applicable to everybody that we come here to solve a weight loss problem, but
Mhm.
ultimately that's not the problem.
No.
That's just one of the outcomes.
Mhm.
So when we solve that problem, we often start seeing other aspects of our life blossom or
Mhm.
bloom in a great way where we can actually be like, this is more than just fitness. This is something more than that.
Mhm.
And I know you experience it because you're at every single community event that we can host, and I
Close
love
to
it.
it.
I love it. I love having people that we can depend on to be there
Mhm.
when we're going to try to reach outside of our comfort zone and throw on something. So
Mhm.
I'd like to talk just a little bit about a couple of those things that I know you've attended.
Mhm.
One of them was a flexibility mobility workshop, which we'll be hosting another one soon.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that workshop? You remember which one I'm talking
Yes.
about? Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that workshop? Maybe anything you gleaned from it?
I found out that actually I didn't have as many physical issues as I thought I did, although I learned why I have to squat wider because of my hips, and that one arm is definitely weaker than the other, and so we've been working on that
Yeah.
with the dumbbell workouts. That was my greatest takeaway, but also you made the comment like, we're here not for performance, but to basically better our lives
Yeah.
and make modifications that fit you instead of always striving to beat the next person or
Yeah, so what Jana's referring to right now is I brought up 3 categories, which kind of are the 3 categories that all your whys for doing CrossFit or fitness in general would fit under that umbrella of each one, and how each one of those actually impacts the other ones. And so I wrote down on a whiteboard health, ego, and performance. Ego has like a really bad rep, but it's actually very important because we talk about self-confidence and stuff. Sometimes you need to chase a little bit of ego. Sometimes you need to let the ego completely go, right? But what we did was I went around and asked people why they were here, and we wrote down all these whys on the board, and we started categorizing them, and I would, explain why they fit in each category, and nobody's like, well, that doesn't fit there, because it doesn't. But none of them actually ended up under the performance category, which I actually, when I went into that workshop, I was expecting pretty even keel of everything. But ultimately, ego and health were the only 2 that had anything in them. So I was really surprised to see that, and it helped me as a coach too, because I could be like, I'm not teaching performance to these people. I'm teaching health. And so I was able to shift my focus over to what the people are really here for, is health. So I'm going to make sure that what comes out of my mouth is health, right? So that's how I shifted my perspective a little bit. But in regards to what you're talking about was if you chase performance, you likely have to sacrifice a little bit of health, and you have to boost your ego to do that, right? So that's one thing about the performance goals, right? So what I was getting at was it was clear that nobody was here for that. So I was like, so why are we focused on getting a muscle up? Why are we focused on more weight in our back squat? Why are we focused on all that stuff? When ultimately, we're here for health and longevity for most of us. And some of us are here for some confidence. And oftentimes, if you get really healthy, you're going to feel really confident too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you were alluding to in that. The second workshop you went to was the goal workshop,
Yes.
which that was just last week or whatever.
Yeah.
Anything you gleaned off that?
It was kind of a reminder. I used to journal a lot to deal with issues that I was going through. And also through my weight loss, I actually was doing it. Sometimes it was just like me venting of what my day was that day, or
Mm-hmm.
what may have been my triggers to want to overeat or whatever. But I had gotten away from that, and I forgot how beneficial that was for me. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, was like,
Okay.
well, I probably should take up journaling again.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Because I'm still working on the goal that I was supposed to set on there.
Right. I mean, goals are always just evolving.
Yeah.
Right. So they're never like, I feel like they're never like just, I 100% met it, and I'm
Mhm.
going to choose a different goal.
Yeah.
It's usually I've met enough of it, I'm going to choose something else. Right. Well, cool. Your journey has been really awesome to just be a small part of, and I'm happy to see where you're at today. And thank you for joining me and taking time out of your Sunday to come and do this with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And I'm looking forward to the future with you too.
I'm looking forward to it too.